That's it.
Okay. All right. So we want to thank you for tuning in for our very first live event from
I'm
the.
excited.
I am too, because we normally don't do this. And so we got past all of the little hiccups and things. And you talked about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yes.
And anybody who has questions, please write them down because you're going to get an opportunity to ask her questions.
Yes, yes.
And yes, so you went to university. How did you get started in becoming a media professor?
Okay, so we have to go back before I went to college. My initial thought of what I wanted to do was fashion design. So I had my plan. I had been designing since I was little because I loved clothes so much. So I remember I in started drawing and getting good in second grade. So my thing was always to draw for my teacher. I would always draw some type of Snoopy because I love the Peanuts. So I would draw Snoopy the Red Baron. I would draw, that was my thing. So because I drew every day, I got better and better and better. By third grade, I was actually drawing things like tigers with pastels and things like this. So I was actually becoming a really good artist. And so I put that into clothing because I love clothing. And I started designing by fourth grade. In fact, I had a line that I designed called Contrast that I was like, okay, if I ever, when I get older, this is my line. I'm going to call it Contrast. Don't ask me why. A 9-year-old comes up with a heady name like that, but I did. And so I started designing. And so when I got to high school, this was still my thing. This is still what I wanted to do. My father, my parents are Nigerian, asked me, so what are you going to college for? Mind you, I'm only in ninth grade. Okay, just got out of eighth grade. So I just threw out law because the only acceptable things for Nigerian families, especially at that point, doctor, lawyer, engineer. Oh, well, sorry, there's a fourth, disgrace the family. So I wasn't going to do number four. But I just threw out law. I said, law school or fashion design? And he looked at me like, fashion? He said, what kind of rubbish is that? I said, okay, well, we won't do that. So later on, what he actually did, because in addition to fashion, I loved TV. I was a television addict and still am. I absolutely loved theater as well. So I'm also like an actor and a dancer. So I loved anything that was performance. And it's all communication, which is what I ended up majoring in. He was the one that suggested, did my camera drop?
Yes, your camera dropped, but we can still hear you. So
Okay.
keep
So I'm going
rolling.
to keep going and then hopefully we'll come back on. I don't know what's happened. So he suggested mass communication. And at the time I didn't really know what that was, but mass communication is basically like one to many, not necessarily just one person, but one entity, whether it's a radio station, a newspaper, television station, whatever the case may be, to many people, to the masses. So he said, well, since you like theater and acting and you're into television, have you thought about mass communication? And I said, I hadn't. So I did a little bit of research, and that's basically what I ended up doing, mass comm. And so with that, I did all sorts of mass comm. So mass comm theory kind of was the basis, but my thing was I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I also was in the media study program at the University of Buffalo, which was independent film and video making. And that was actually my first taste of picking up a video camera or a film camera of some type and making a visual product. So that's actually where that got started. So keep going. And I get through undergrad, but then I decided I wanted to go to graduate school. So I did all of my graduate work at Howard University, both master's and PhD. But as you're going through a graduate program, it gets a little heady, if that makes any sense. So everything that's creative, you kind of in a sense, leave by the wayside. I definitely did that in the master's program, although in the master's program, I was involved in radio. So I was involved in our campus radio station. But then when I got to the PhD program, it got even more heady. So I didn't do as much creatively with visuals. What I did then was threw myself into dance because I needed that outlet. So I was also a professional dancer. At the same time, I danced in 3 dance companies while I was in my PhD program. But once I graduated from the PhD program at Howard, I decided, you know what? I really miss production. And things had changed a little bit since that point where I needed to go back and relearn editing. So at the time when I learned, it was called linear editing, meaning either reel to reel. If you remember the film reels, right? When you have a film projector, when you edited film, you did it reel to reel. So it was a one reel here and then the take up reel on the other side, and you would zoom through, you would cut with a razor where you wanted, you hoped that you cut in the right place, and then you would send that off to a film processing lab. Because I was in upstate New York, New York City, they're all over the place, but we didn't have one at the University of Buffalo. So the closest place was Toronto. So I would always drive to Toronto. We would, it would be same day processing, but if you had it in by 9, it would be to you by 5 and you could drive back. And Toronto was only an hour and a half drive from Buffalo. So it wasn't that big of a deal. So everything had changed from then, from reel to reel, and using like 2 monitors to edit video. Everything now was using computers. Mac was the big one on the game, right? In the game, with Final Cut Pro, Avid for PC, Sony Vegas. So all of these programs using computers were starting to crop up that were assisting you to edit video and to make your videos cleaner and sharper than the old school way, if that makes any sense. So I decided when I graduated, the month after I got my PhD, I went back to school to New York Film Academy in Manhattan. And I did a 16 millimeter film program so that I could learn to edit the new way. So I had to go back to bring you to today.
Okay. So now you are a film professor.
Communication.
A communications professor.
What?
Are you
right.
still
So
teaching?
Go ahead. Yeah, I am. I am still
Okay.
teaching. So I teach I teach part-time, and I've been doing that now. So I was a full-time professor from 2001 all the way until 2015. And now I just do it as part of everything that I do for the University of Maryland Global Campus. So I teach communication courses and mostly media courses, but I also do teach film. So I'm what they call a communication generalist, even though communication or mass media is my big thing. I'm a generalist because I also teach public speaking. I also teach a small group communication. I also teach intercultural and organizational communication. So I understand communication as a whole, but my specialty is mass media and film. So I teach both.
Okay. Does anybody have a question for her right at this time? Okay, so I'm going to jump in there. So when we're talking about mass media, we all in our businesses need to be reaching the masses, right?
Yes.
So what kind of a plan do we need to have? I guess that's a big question.
What do you recommend for small businesses?
What do I recommend for small businesses? So, and in a minute, after I do this, I'm going to try and jiggle the camera because it's bothering me that you can't see me. What do I recommend for small businesses in terms of using video? Is that what we're talking about?
Or mass communication?
Okay, well, so if we're talking about mass communication, that is, partially the use of video. That's understanding what's happening. Look, communication is involved in everything. Media is involved in everything. And people who think that they don't have to, or I don't need to because my industry doesn't, you will soon be left behind. I can't tell you how many people are now crying the blues because singing river songs. That's not even a thing, but whatever. They're singing river songs, okay, crying rivers because they did not pay attention to what was coming down the pipeline. And what's coming down the pipeline is everyone needs to be visual in some sort of way, in some shape of or way or form. And everybody needs to understand, we already know everybody needs to understand AI. It is a necessity. It is not a choice. So it's the same thing with visuals. It is a necessity, not a choice. So the first thing that I think you need to do is you need to understand, just like when you're building your business, what is your brand? What is your brand story? And how can you enhance your brand story by using video? I think you need to understand video or audio, right? Because you could do a podcast as well, any type of mass medium, or you could be blogging, right, on a site and doing that, like using creating a Substack and having a blog that people follow, because people still do read. So any of those mass mediums is not, it should be media, but never mind. They say mediums now, so I'm trying to get used to it. So any of those mass mediums, any of those platforms, you should try and incorporate. Does that mean you have to do all of them? No. Does that mean if you're camera shy, you necessarily have to be on video? There are ways around it, but you need to be creating moving visuals that people can gravitate toward. But I will say this, that, okay, so one of the 10 million businesses I do is I'm a reseller. So I resell pre-loved items, but also new items. My big thing is Poshmark. I do really well on Poshmark. And here's the thing. I started doing Poshmark 4 years ago, and I was doing relatively well because, there are millions of sellers on Poshmark. So the fact, my sister also does it. We're like, the fact that people find us and buy is miraculous because there are so many sellers on Poshmark. So I was doing relatively well. When I got permission to do live sales, because Poshmark does live sales now. There have been others like Whatnot, etc., that have done live sales for a little while. Amazon, you're allowed to do some live sales, but that's for, the products there. But these are products that I have inventory for and I sell. I have to say, I haven't really done the math, but my sales, I would say, had to have gone up 75% because I was on camera and because I was on selling. If I know I need to make some money, I'm like, oh, let me go do a live show because I know I'm going to sell some things there. Because what I do is I bring the same charisma that I have on my show, MediaScope, to live selling. So there's no difference between what I do on MediaScope and what I do on Poshmark, except for the information. But I even try and mix that in. I try and give tips and tricks and make it valuable. Not a word, but I'm making it one. So whatever you do, you need to be giving value to your audience, right? If you give value, trust me, they're going to give value back to you. So you need to be prepared to tell your brand story in some sort of visual way. See how you can do that. If you're camera shy, you can say, all right, I'm going to do a podcast. No, all of these things are an uphill battle. And there's so much content in the space right now that it's difficult to get noticed. So it is going to take, on your part, it is going to take diligence. It is going to take consistency, and it is going to take I won't say perfecting. I'll say improving the craft of either being live, recording video, recording a podcast, writing your blog posts for people to grasp on. So it's doable, but it takes some time. And I think sometimes business owners, especially business owners that are not used to all of this technology, not used to using media to push their business forward. And Francine, you know this because you're a realtor. Realtors are really on the back end when it comes to using technology because so much of it is based off of relationships. And so they feel, well, I'm already selling houses. I don't have to do that. Well, you're selling houses to today's audience. What about tomorrow? What about that's what you have to think about. Even if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to be on TikTok. I don't need to be on TikTok. Maybe so. But if your audience involves anybody that could be on TikTok that gravitates it towards it, that you want to be your customer tomorrow, then you need to consider these things. Does that make sense? So those are some basic things to think about when it comes to that.
Thank you. You can jiggle your camera.
Okay.
And we don't mind. I was thinking about the industries that are not that okay. The insurance industries. That's the ones that the industries like Patrice and Denise are in, where you're trying to get somebody to do something that's going to be helpful for them. I think the car industry insurance has got it down with their visuals, but how does one a industry that is not so popular, is that a word?
It's non-tangible.
Yeah, non-tangible. Okay, a non-tangible. It's a non
product.
right. So it's a non-tangible, but there are other non-tangibles. But there is something like the funeral industry is also one that it's kind of how do we? You have to be very creative, or hook up with somebody that's creative, to be able now to get into the space with video, to let somebody know, because podcasts is really good. I was talking with someone and I asked, okay, so what's the difference between whole life and term life? Because nobody seems to be able to explain that to me.
In English. You know, to someone who's not in the industry, you know what I mean?
Right. But if you had a podcast or a blog post, okay, so Insurance 101, what you need to know, I'm more than likely going to read that because I need to know simply what this is. What's an annuity? It's a big word and I still don't understand it. But if somebody, I would be probably your best friend if somebody could explain that. You understand what I mean? Because now I can get the benefits, but I can't do benefits. Oh, Dr. Tachi is
Disconnected.
okay. So I need the benefits. No, she's disconnected. So we need to.
It's 10 o'clock back there. Right?
Yeah, it's 10. Okay, here she is.
Yeah. I don't know. I was jiggling the camera. I was still here. I'm hearing everything you say.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, your camera was gone, but you're still there.
Okay,
So
good. I don't know what's happening. All right.
Okay, we don't mind. So,
I mind.
Okay. Yes. Okay, it's StreamYard. It's 10 o'clock where you are. We got a storm going on over here, so it's probably on our end. Well, not a storm, but you know, they said it was.
Everybody looked out the window like, whoa, wait a minute, what's that?
They said it was, you know, because this is not normal. So we were talking about the industries that are little less flashy or a little less
Video oriented.
or you know, how do you there you are. Woo!
Yes.
Okay.
Yay.
So
okay.
yay. So the industries that are a little bit more of a challenge, you know what I mean, to get people on board.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like I said, every industry can benefit and use. Let's just start with video, for example, right? So do you all remember seeing years ago, because I was still teaching at Nova Southeastern, so this had to be a good 2013 or 2014. There was it was a reality show called The Best Funeral Ever. Does anybody remember that?
No.
I will say it was an abomination.
Okay.
And I tried. It was really an abomination. And it centered around, why do I want to say Memphis? I want to say Memphis because it was a very Memphis thing to do, but I want to say it was either Memphis or Atlanta, and it was centered around a funeral home that provided experiences for the deceased. Do you
Oh,
remember this?
what?
Is it coming? Yes.
No,
So
the
if
most recent thing I remember is the drive through.
Okay, go ahead,
drive-through
Dr.
Go
funeral, yes. No. This is much worse. So they had whatever the favorite thing of the deceased was, they tried to recreate it. So there was one where they took, they did a cremation. They took them on to a theme park because this person loved roller coasters, and they took them on a roller coaster. There was another one who loved the prices. Sorry, let's make no Wheel of Fortune. Do you know they took the casket and put it in the middle of a big wheel and they spun it? I said, this is an abomination. But that goes to show you, well, that's probably not what we would do. It goes to show you that you can use video in every single industry. You would not think that that's the case. And if you look now, what you would say to yourself, obviously everybody's using video now. Let's talk about funeral homes. Many of them are using video now. Before, especially, and they cropped up during COVID because they could not be open during COVID. They weren't allowed to be open. So since that was the case, they had to find other ways to do it. Okay, we can only have X amount of people in the parlor, but we can live stream this so that loved ones can be present at the services. So we started to see more and more of that. So now the thing is, all right, well, what else can we do that is interesting? Can we have blogs, right? Where people, which they do on their sites, they have these blogs, these running blogs where people can talk about how they knew the individual and the good times and things like that. So basically, they call it's a memorial, but it's basically a blog if you think about it. So there are ways to incorporate all of these technologies in everything. Insurance. Go to TikTok, and if you put insurance talk, hashtag insurance talk, you are going to find insurance people on TikTok that talk about specific things. It's pulling out the things that people normally would not talk about. So like you said, you're talking about term life and whole life, and nobody understands the damn difference. I know I don't. But if you are charismatic, you can pull that out, make a reel, make a TikTok, make a YouTube short, do short content. You don't have to sit there all day and do it, but do short content that explains something out. I've been working with a realtor, and that's actually what I've been working with him now for 6 years. So not only did I create a show for him called Tuesdays with Gary, which is where he's explaining real estate concepts, and they're very short shows, so no more than 5 minutes generally. But we also do short form content that may be 90 seconds or less, where he's explaining a concept, and it's basically what's hot in real estate. So again, we're in South Florida. And if you know, the big thing that happened in South Florida was the, I can't remember the name of the building, but remember the building collapse that happened here? What was it, last
Oh
year?
yeah, the condo that went
Yeah,
down.
the condo
Yes.
collapse. I'm trying to remember the name of it and I can't. But it was in Sunny Isles Beach, which is just a few miles from here. And that was the big thing. So now what has happened is they do have some condo regulations, right? So whereas before, condo buildings were only required to do a 40-year review. But now what is happening is, so every 40 years you had your review. And a lot of these buildings, because a lot of the buildings by the beach, unless they're new, they were built like in the 60s and 70s. And so, 40-year review for some was actually passed and maybe getting ready for their second 40-year review or something like that. So you had that. And now if you're by the beach, if you're a building by the beach, it's 25 years. So you have to have a 25-year review. So they've cut down the time significantly. So the thing is, we just did this today. We shot what are the things that you need to know if you're looking to buy a condo in South Florida. So we went through all of the different things, and it was a short video. It was informative. And because he's so used to doing video now, it went like that. And we batch recorded. So I always suggest you do this. Don't wait until, okay, it's this week, I have to do another one. Sit down and unless you're doing a live, sit down and pre-record your video and then dole them out week by week. If you say, I am going to take 2 hours on Wednesday and do my content, I'm going to be able to get 5 videos out of there, you could have a video a week easily. And then you could dedicate more time if you want more. So I'm hoping this is answering the question, whereas what you should do is take an unusual aspect, an aspect that people don't understand, an aspect that is not really talked about very much, and you amplify that. You explain it. You be charismatic talking about this thing. You, because again, and what can you do to find out what people are talking about? Do your research, scan headlines. You can even ask ChatGPT, but remember right now, ChatGPT only goes up to 2021 for the basic plan, and they're working on expanding it. But so there are some things that may have changed since from the information they have. So just be careful with that, but do your research, read the periodicals in your industry. If there's something that seems like people, what is this? People don't understand. You explain it, but explain it in layman's or layperson's terms, and do a video, do a blog post, do a podcast episode, bring somebody on to talk about it if you're not comfortable talking about it. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. That was very good. Any questions, anybody? Okay, I'm not seeing any
As
questions.
far as the blogging is concerned, is blogging a thing still?
Is blogging
Yeah.
a thing still?
It is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. See, because here's the thing. On its own, you may say it's not that big of a thing, but it really is. Because if you look at sites, for example, like Substack, people use blogs because the written word, let me just go back to this. The written word is still prevails when it comes to communicating your expertise. Why do you think people have books? The big thing, even though all of this exists, people are like, oh yeah, I'm writing a book, right? Because people are considered to have more credence, to be more knowledgeable when they have written words behind them. So yeah, it still does work. And here's the thing, blogs work well for that type of thing, to demonstrate your expertise, right? And blogs work well because the thing is, if you're trying to include everything, you can shoot your video, extract the audio from that, and use that for your podcast, get the transcript of that, and use it for your blog post. So it's not just about having a blog, it's about across the board using as much media as you can and using that same piece of content. Now I've told you 3 different ways, and you can even chop it up further if you think about video, where you're like, okay, shorts, reels, TikToks, Snapchats. If you do that, I can take that longer piece, extract something out of there, and use it for that. So hopefully that has answered. But yes, they are still a thing. They are.
And did you give me the pizza to go?
Oh, let me go do that.
Okay, anybody else? Patrice, go ahead, speak loud.
What it would be the best recommended app to use for social media, or what would be like a number one type of app to, like, YouTube?
What's the number one type of app to use for social media?
Instagram, just what, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for advertisement.
So there are 2 different answers to that. There's what's the number one, the heaviest used app, and then there's what's the app that is going to make sense for you to use. Because if your audience is not on Facebook, does it make sense for you to pummel a whole lot of energy into like a Facebook group or whatever? Probably not. So the first answer to your question in terms of sheer data and numbers and how many people right now, Facebook still has the most daily active users. Or the most users. I shouldn't say daily active. They have the most users. It doesn't mean that, but their audience skews older. So if you're trying to engage young people, right? Facebook is probably not where you're going to be. You would lean more toward TikTok, lean more towards Instagram, where there are a cohort of younger users. So there is no one answer, no one perfect app for everybody. There is no one size fits all, because what you do is different compared to what I do, to what Francine does, to what Terralina does, to what anybody does. We're all going to have maybe probably slightly different audiences, different purposes we're using it for, etc. So again, you have to look at what is your message and who is your audience. So you have to ask, you all know this from business, who is your business avatar? Who is your video avatar, right? I always ask this. Who is your show avatar or your content avatar? What do they look like? Give them a name, okay? You can name Agatha is 36 years old. She likes to work out in the morning. She's really into fashion. She likes to eat quinoa. She loves avocado toast, okay? So I am giving a name, and if she was 36, Agatha probably wouldn't be her name, but let's call her Agatha, okay? So we're going to call her Agatha. So you're really looking at who your audience avatar is, who your show avatar or your content avatar is. And then based off of that, based off of what your brand is and who are the people that are likely to engage with that brand, then you do the deeper research of, let me look at each platform and what the demographics are over there. That will help you in terms of what works for you, right? So do you mind telling me exactly what you do and who your audience is?
Patrice?
No, I don't mind telling you. I have two different brands. One is anti-aging beauty, hair, health, and wellness. It's e-commerce, so it's a lot of putting videos together and posting them on Instagram, Facebook, stories. So I'm getting used to doing that. So I do that. So it's a product. One is a product. The other is financial services when it comes to insurance, protecting families, educating, everything related to, your retirement, how money works, things like that. So I hadn't really dug in deep yet as far as the social media part of it, but I will, and I want to put it out there,
You definitely should, because it can be very helpful. And they are, see, I'm putting it in quotes, free, because nothing is free. But essentially, you don't have to turn over any paper currency for it, right? Or digital currency for it. So definitely use them. So let's go with your first one, for example, really quickly. You anti-aging in terms, it's a product, you said. So it's in terms of anti-aging for the skin as opposed to internal anti-aging. Does that make sense?
Yes, for the skin. It's anti-aging, clean, plant-based. It works, internally. I mean, you don't need, it's not makeup where you need foundation or mascara. It's all for the skin.
Okay. So that's awesome. So who are your customers?
Everyone. There's no age discrimination at all.
So babies are your customers?
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost the question.
No, I said, so babies are your customer?
No, I meant to exclude babies.
Okay. So you do have, you need to look at the data, because you do have a cohort of people. So yeah, we always say that. And it's like when you're trying to pitch a show, for example, people ask, and I've seen this done before. All right, well, who's your target audience? Who watch? Oh, everyone. No, everyone doesn't watch. And it's easier for us to say everyone, right? Because that we're trying to be inclusive. So same thing with you. You're trying to be inclusive and not exclude. But the reality is there probably is a cohort of people with the same demographics that tend to buy. And so do you gather that data when people buy from you? Because if you did, and you do, you probably will notice who is interested in anti-aging. Those are the people that you go after primarily. Secondarily, are the people you want to turn into your customers, right? So eventually, everyone is going to deal with. You age as soon as you leave the womb. You're already starting to age, right? So people are already are going to at some point be like, okay, I'm interested in something that is an anti-aging product, and more, they're probably getting younger, like in their 20s. So, how do you? What you have to do is investigate, how do I captivate someone in their 20s where even if they're not my customer now, they think about my name when they turn like 27 because they're getting close to their 30s, right? So everyone is not your customer. You do have a cohort. You just have to find out who they are and then do the cross-referencing with which social platforms cater to this group, your primary group, which social platforms cater to the secondary group, right? So in there, you're right. You probably have a little bit of everyone, but there is a stronger cohort amongst some of your demographic than others. So I don't know. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Any other questions? Well, Dr. Tachi, I think we've covered our questions. Anybody? I see that we got two people who are on. Okay, LaWanna.
You were just talking about researching who does what platforms. How do you research that? Because I've been going through
say that again. I'm sorry.
How do you determine which demographics are on which platform? I mean, I know everybody's on them, but which dominates? What age bracket dominates which platform?
Okay, TJ, who comes on our show tomorrow at 8, she just did a whole breakdown of what and Dr. Tachi, you can let us know as well. She did a whole breakdown of what platforms and what the ages were and stuff like that. So then you can go back and
have a straw, please?
and then Dr. Tachi continue with that answer, please. But we have a couple of
Terry is TJ is absolutely wonderful when it comes to the numbers and the data. She loves that type of stuff. So I would definitely encourage going back to watch a Tech Tuesday. Is that what it's called?
Digital whatever it is on Tuesday, and it was about 2 weeks ago. And
right.
She may be I think she was going to continue because it was a lot.
It was a lot
of data. Oh my gosh.
And it changes every day.
But it was very, very helpful.
It is. She's great. What I would also say is it's very simple. Just go to Google and put in what are the demographics of people that use various social media, right? You could do it Facebook, Instagram, you could do it separately, but if you just put that in, you're going to get all sorts of charts and graphs. Let me tell you one good place to look this up. The Pew Center for Internet Life. Pew does PEW. They do so many great studies and a lot of research. So it's called the Pew Center for Internet and American Life, something like that. But if you do that, it will pull up, and they do all sorts of, daily, almost all sorts of studies on who uses what. what platforms are the most used. So you can find, if you go to the Pew Center, you'll find it with no problem. And that's something, bookmark that, keep that, because it constantly changes and they are constantly doing these types of things. You could also, go to, the platform itself will have a little bit of that demographic information as well, because they're pulling it from the platforms themselves. Like I said, right now, the largest group of users is still Facebook, even though this is still creeping up. And even though, a lot of people use TikTok, it's still behind a little bit. It is just easier to get discovered on TikTok, which is why there's so much buzz about it. So.
All right.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well,
Sure.
Dr. Tachi, thank you for tuning in and coming in
Absolutely.
in the evening. I know you're a night owl, so.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just about to start. So.
Oh, wow.
So thank you for being our inaugural live stream contributor for our live event. We appreciate your time, and we will be looking forward to following you look for Dr. Tachi on the internet and follow her. MediaScope is on Wednesdays.
Mhm.
TACHI, doctor in front. Dr. Tachi. Yeah. So
I should have had my name up.
Remarks? Oh, that's on us. 'Cause we did it. Anyway, any parting remarks, Dr. Tachi?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored that I'm the inaugural virtual speaker for this. I hope that what I had to say was helpful. You all, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I am open to that. I'm Dr. Tachi everywhere. If you're on Instagram, that's actually a really good way to reach me, to DM me on Instagram, because I'm there all the time. And just start to use what is there. There are so many tools that are provided. Many of them are free and low cost. You just have to use them. And if you can't, because I do understand running 10 million businesses myself, that time is an issue as well, then that means that you need to look at getting some help. And that doesn't always mean you have to pay a high amount. You may get somebody that's a VA that can help you. My sister has a VA that is in the Philippines that is fantastic, that helps her out with several things. That's an option. There's also the option to go to your local university, because you probably would have a tie there, and get some students from the communication department, from the business department, that are looking for internships, or whatever your field is, that are looking for internships that can help you with these things. But if you need social media help, definitely get somebody that's a communication student, maybe a business student, familiar with social media, and they can help you there. So just start. There are no more excuses, because there's enough out there to help push your business forward. You just have to start. And that's what I would say.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on Friday.
Yes,
Tech
I'll be
Life
there on
Weekend.
Friday.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.